Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Council of Basingstoke and Dean, I think it's only appropriate to start by always saying what a debt of gratitude our community owes to you. I've often thought that anyone who offers for public service offers something really quite extraordinary. You risk public gaze, you risk criticism. Hopefully sometimes you get praise. On behalf of the residents of this borough, thank you for your public service. I've been asked to just speak for a few moments at the start of your council meeting. And I wonder if I could indulge myself, I suppose, by just reflecting on something I've been working on over the last few weeks. And it's around the theme of generosity. There's a remarkable story in the life of Jesus. He walks into dinner, he reclines at the dining table ready to eat. And then a very surprising conversation happens. Basically on what does it take to make you clean as a person. And he was adamant it wasn't what was on the outside, but what was on the inside that mattered. And then he gave one phrase: be generous to the poor, and you will be clean inside. It seems to me that generosity is something that we ought to aspire to both individually and corporately. Individually, because I believe that actually generosity protects you from some of the vices of this world. It protects you from aggressive greed. It turns acquisition into the ability to give. The tougher one is, what will it take for a community or a town or even a borough to be known not as a place of excellence, although this is a borough of excellence, but a borough of generosity? The Judeo-Christian scriptures talk of the poor, the widow, the orphan, and the stranger, all having a particular place at the heart of good society. I want to commend that again and again to us. But I wonder too what it takes for a nation to be known as a generous nation. In the last few months, I wonder, maybe those of you a bit older than me will feel actually you don't know quite what you're talking about, Bishop. But I wonder if in these last few months we've seen instability on a global scale that is almost unprecedented. The conflict between Ukraine and Russia, the conflict in Palestine, the West Bank and Israel, perhaps slightly more hidden conflicts, the Darfur region of Sudan, places where life is very cheap, where despair is all too close, and we would want hope to be reborn. A former Prime Minister of this nation said, "You make a living by what you get, but you make a life by what you give." Say a short prayer for your deliberations. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I pray for wisdom for you as a council as you lead our community. I pray for discernment for the decisions you'll have to take today. I pray for courage in your leadership, and I pray for generosity for us all. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chaplain. Please sit down. Can I ask all the members in from outside? Please, Gary. Thank you. Members, please ensure you have signed in with your voting cards, which are on the table. Apologies for absence. Are there any apologies? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one. Councillor Cubitt, apologies.
Councillor Gavin James.
Yes, I have one apology from South West Trains that are currently carrying Andy Konieczko to the meeting.
Councillor Menes Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Carr.
Thank you. Councillor Ibrahim, congrats for your promotion.
Apologies from Councillor Jackie Tuster.
Thank you. Now, declaration of interest. Are there any declaration of interest? No. So the minutes of the meeting held on 18th July 2024. I will move the minutes are a correct record. Is there a seconder, Deputy Mayor, of the minutes?
There certainly is, Mr. Mayor. Seconded.
Are the minutes agreed? Lovely. Now, I come to item 4, which is announcement. I have got one announcement. On Tuesday the 15th, I was delighted to confer British citizenship to many people from around the world who have decided to settle in our borough or elsewhere in UK. So this is one of my announcements. Chief Executive?
No announcements, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Now, questions from members of the public. There are no questions this evening. Petitions. There are no petitions. Now, resignations and appointment. Are there any changes to committee seats? No. Are there any nominations to fill vacancies on the outside bodies listed? Councillor Menes Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Democratic Services Officers kindly asked us to consider whether we had any nominations for the South East employers, and I would like to nominate Councillor Isaac.
Is there a seconder? Yes. Yeah. Is that agreed? Agreed. Yes, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the YPI project, can I please nominate Councillor Karen Watts?
Right. Is there a seconder? Yeah. Is that agreed? Agreed. Yeah, nothing else, right. So we come to the capital monitoring report as at 30th of June 2024. Councillor Gavin James, would you present the report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is not the most exciting report. We're only 3 months into the financial year. So this is really a report just looking at those 3 months of progress in terms of delivering our capital programme. You can see there are 3 projects that make the difference in the spend so far, which are outlined on section 4, which is page 32, quite minor in nature. One's actually brought forward. The Leisure Park one makes sense to push back, and the regeneration of the Oakley Hall is proving more complex. There is also a request for Council to approve an addition to the programme. Mr. Mayor, the Council is proud of the homeless support and outreach services that we provide, and they play an important role in preventing rough sleeping. The Council was awarded funding from government specifically to support preventing homelessness. Maritime House is the premises for the current outreach team and is well located and established. It looks like it will be on the market, which means that we will need to move to acquire it so we can carry on delivering the service because we don't have any alternatives at present. We require Council's approval to add the purchase, subject to surveys, to the capital programme of those £300,000 addition we're asking Council to support.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Harvey, would you like to speak now or later? Oh, there, I got Councillor Isaac.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to the portfolio holder. I hope you both had good summer holidays. There are two questions I have for the portfolio holder. In paragraph 7.8, the report states, SIL will provide a significant future income stream to the council, and future estimated SIL income retained by this council to meet priority community infrastructure needs has been reflected in the forecast, available resources in the forecast. This SIL totals a very significant 14.482 million through the life of the programme to 2027-28. The report goes on to say, given the significant requirement in the capital programme to fund the redevelopment of the leisure park, it is anticipated that all council retained strategic SIL receipts collected to date and in future years will be allocated to fund this project in the first instance. So question one for Councillor Gavin James is, if all SIL payments available to this council are to go to the leisure park, and of course I do rely on his, have confidence in what he says about the leisure park, what funding will be available for other strategic projects for communities across the borough in future, such as multi-use sports facilities, for instance? So my second question is, the new Labour government has announced as long ago as the 7th of August that it is scrapping SIL in favour of Section 106. Though this important point is not highlighted in the report, how confident is he that these new arrangements will provide the funds to meet planned expenditure under the approved capital programme for this borough? After all, SIL, unlike Section 106, is strategic, not site-specific, is based on a clear formula rather than being negotiated as with Section 106, and is front-ended by grant of planning permission rather than back-ended instalments as construction takes place. It seems to be rather worrying, given Labour's evident problems with figures and sums generally. I'd be interested in his views.
Are there any other speakers? No.
Councillor Harvey wants to speak.
Councillor Harvey, would you like to speak? Okay, Councillor Gavin James, would you like to sum up?
Yes, firstly, in question one, in relation to the leisure park, this was agreed previously by the council. Obviously, the replacement of the aquadrome with a modern leisure facility is vitally important to this council. It is going to cost significant funds, and therefore we have to maximise the use of our capital budgets and programmes, the funding available. And so the SIL money that is dedicated to the town centre it has been earmarked for that, subject to other capital receipts we may receive. Obviously, as he will well know, the important thing is you can pay for it. How you actually pay for it will depend on what other capital receipts come in. Obviously, in an ideal world, I would not want to be exposed to developing many down, which takes some upfront contributions in order to pay for infrastructure, and replacing the aquadrome at the same time. It's not ideal, and that's why the SIL money has been earmarked for that. What I can confirm is that the SIL money that goes to those councils with parish councils with neighbourhood plans particularly has been distributed, it is available and actually not being spent. So there's currently about £2.7 million, I think, available to parishes. That money is protected for parishes to use. We wouldn't be tapping into that. So I am relatively confident. In relation to the Labour government's change of policy, as you'll know, we do have to hold a stable level of reserves because we don't quite know what governments might do. They might change their mind, they might change things. I would imagine if they're going to change the SIL policy and get rid of it, they've also got to change that in a 106 policy. Otherwise, no one can ever fund any major infrastructure projects, but we'll watch that closely, and when I find out, I'll let him know.
Is that agreed? Lovely. That's good. Recommendation. So amendment to the Constitution. I will move the recommendation to note the alteration to the public participation meeting rules. Seconder.
I'm happy to second it.
Right. Would anyone like to speak? No. Is that agreed? Thank you. Now, Audit and Accounts Committee Annual Report. Councillor Basham, would you like to move it? Yes.
Good evening, everybody. Just very briefly, this council delegates some pretty important responsibilities to Audit and Accounts Committee. They're set out in the Constitution, what's delegated. Councillor Faulkner started the good work of bringing an independent member onto that committee to, I guess, boost its skill base and its knowledge of that sector, of the independent sector and of finance. I've taken the work forward following the SIT for guidance. We carried out an effectiveness review last year. Councillors engaged, members on the committee engaged with that positively, and we came out with some recommendations. The recommendations are set out in the report. We've worked through some of them. We continue to work through others. I think I just wanted to say this report is one of those recommendations. We weren't doing that before. This council gets an annual report from Scrutiny Committee and from Standards Committee. It didn't from Audit and Accounts. Hopefully, every year it's a sort of nothing, there's nothing to see here type report. But, you know, I have to stress the importance of good governance, and I'm working with officers and with members on the committee to improve our governance. Not that it's defective, it's just marginal, small changes, small gains. I think, you know, good governance is at the heart of any organisation, and it's how we protect ourselves from a woking or a Thurrock type situation, along with other members on other committees and their vigilance. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Basham. Can I have a seconder? Yep. Yeah, I got a seconder. Is that agreed? Now, calendar of meetings for 2025 and 2026. I will move the recommendation to agree the calendar of meetings. The seconder.
Yeah, happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Is that agreed? Great. Now we come to the notice of motions. There is a lot on the agenda. So I would expect councillors to keep to the allotted time to avoid repetition. Please be concise. Thank you very much indeed. So, Councillor Mumala Neni, would you like to propose the motion? You have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Labour government recent decision to restrict the winter fuel payment to only pensioners in receipt of means-tested benefits like pension credit, as announced by Chancellor Rachel Reeves. The estimated impact of this decision, which AG UK says will mean 2 million pensioners who badly need the money to stay warm this winter will not receive it. The significant role that winter fuel payments play in helping order residents, Basingstoke and Dean, and across the UK, afford heating during the coldest months, thereby preventing the heat or heat dilemmas and safeguard the health. The criticism from AG UK, the Countryside Alliance, and the other charities highlighting the social injustice and potential health risks posed by this sudden policy change. The additional strain on this decision will place on vulnerable pensioners, many of whom do not claim pension credit despite being eligible, further exaggerating the situation, the financial hardship. This council believes that winter fuel payment has been a lifeline for many older people, across the UK, and that restricting its availability solely to this pension credit risks, leaving many pensioners in financial hardship. While some pensioners currently in receipt of the winter fuel payment may not require it, may thousands across Basingstoke and Dean sit just above the cutoff of pension credit and will now lose their allowance. The decision to means test winter fuel payments, especially such short notice and without adequate compensatory measures, is deeply unfair and will disproportionately affect the health and well-being of our poorest older residents. The government's approach fails to consider the administrative barriers and stigma that prevent eligible pensioners from claiming pension credit, leaving many without the support they desperately need. This council requests the Cabinet to bring forward council-led local awareness campaign to alert those eligible of pension credit, which in some respects will help access the winter fuel payment for those most in need. Request the council leader write to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, urging a review of the decision to means test the winter fuel payment and asking the government to ensure that vulnerable pensioners, particularly those who do not claim pension credit, are protected from fuel poverty. Commit the council to sign the Save the Winter Fuel Payment for Struggling Pensioners petition being run by Age UK and write to all members, offering them the opportunity to sign the petition themselves. Encourage local efforts to promote pension credit uptake through the council services and partnership with local charities and community organizations to ensure that the eligible pensioners in Basingstoke and Dean are supported in claiming their entitlements. Thank you.
Councillor Ganesh, do you wish to second this and speak now, or do you wish to reserve the right to speak to the motion at a later stage?
I would like to reserve the right to speak later, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. So there are 20 minutes to debate this motion. Does anyone wish to speak? Right. Councillor Bowes first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was at a meeting with CAB trustees earlier today, and this issue inevitably came up. And they commented that that highlighting and helping residents to claim pension credits is likely to cause a fairly considerable strain on their already limited resources. Given this, I'd like to ask if you would consider, Aaron, amending the last point, point 4, to add a request to government to provide charities with the necessary funding to accomplish this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Slimming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would echo the comments just made. As many of you may know, I'm involved with Chadley Citizens Advice, and they too are already experiencing people coming forward for help with pension credit. Some of you in this chamber will not even know how much you are entitled to have under pension credit and when you are eligible for it. The government very kindly wrote to me this week a letter to tell me that I may be eligible for it and how I could claim it, and all the benefits that potentially would also attract it. Obviously, other councillors won't have got it because they're not of the right age group. However, they do actually suggest that you go to Citizens Advice in the letter, but they don't say that they're giving any help to Citizens Advice. But I would say to you that many people who could be eligible really don't claim because it is quite complicated. It is not straightforward. And there are so many people of that age group who are literally digitally excluded because they cannot deal with a computer, they don't have one, they don't have a web, and obviously they have to go to other organisations to help them. So I would certainly propose that we accept that amendment if Aaron would take it. Just for your information, you have to have less than £218 and 15p as a single person from all the benefits you get and even any pensions that you might have other than a state pension. The actual state pension for those people born before 51 or women before 53 is £169.50. So they would actually benefit by £48 plus a week. If you're a bit older but still entitled to pension, the new state pension is £221.20. As you can see, that is above, a couple of pounds above what the pension credit is. So basically, most people who are drawing the new state pension, which is more than the basic state pension, are already not eligible for the money. So it is going to be a very small portion of people, and it will be those that are older. They've got to be in their 70s, basically, to be able to even consider credit. And I think it's a shame that the government have chosen to target this, personally. I do think there may be other ways of doing it. There are people like the Liberal Democrats who are suggesting that it would be better to give it to everybody rather than rock the boat and tax people if they get it, because obviously if you earn more than £12,750 a year, you get taxed. So those people who've got private pensions and obviously get £300 on top would be taxed on that. So that would seem a far sensible way of doing it. I understand that obviously this possibly looks like an easy target and maybe not been dealt with properly or communicated properly, because they keep saying that the state pension will increase to cover this cost. But the state pension for those people older will not increase by the same amount that they will for the basic, for the new state pension. So they will not benefit as much as those people who are younger but are still on benefit. So I certainly think we should support this motion, but I certainly think we should show that there are charities out there that are going to struggle to meet the demand to help people, because they do need help, and the help that is coming has to be from charities such as us, or us as councillors actually offering to do something to help people, which we can all do.
Thank you. Councillor Minnes-Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Bishop opened our meeting with a very poignant point about generosity. And I think it's really important that we show each other some generosity tonight. So I'm going to show some generosity to my Labour colleagues. And say, I think quite a lot of us in this room can understand the difficulty when your national colleagues do something which causes you some difficulty locally. It happens to some of us, some of the time. Hopefully it won't happen to all of them, all of the time. I'm heartened by, up and down the country, such an important national issue. Councils have had motions like this in front of them. And Labour councils, Lib Dem councils, independent councils, Conservative councils, and those of all sorts of rainbow coalitions have supported motions so that national government understands what we think and feel about this for our residents as local government. So I hope all of our colleagues will support tonight's motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to start off on a different foot then. Sir Elton John, Sir Paul McCartney, Sir Richard Branson, Joanna Lumley, all of those mentioned have at least two things in common. Do you know what they are? First, as individuals, they have a lot of money. Secondly, and despite an estimated combined wealth of nearly £4.5 billion, is that they are all eligible for the winter fuel payment. Can anyone here say that that is fair? I can't. Is this really how we should be prioritising public funds? Because I don't think we should. The winter fuel payment, introduced by a Labour government in '97, was a required measure to lift pensioners out of poverty. At the time, there were more pensioners in poverty in both absolute terms and as a proportion of society, so it made sense to implement a quick and effective policy. But since then, government analysis has shown that pensioner incomes have risen by 66%, whilst in stark comparison, the incomes of working families have only risen by a measly 13%. This disparity has led to a situation where pensioners now have higher disposable incomes than working families. Now, I don't lack sympathy for our vulnerable pensioners, but means testing with the winter fuel payment is a necessary and pragmatic reform which ensures that public funds go to those who need it the most. And who does need it the most? Well, according to the government and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, there are approximately 9 million people of working age who are currently living in poverty. Add to that the 4.2 million children who live in poverty, according to the Child Poverty Action Group, and you get over 13 million people who could benefit from this reallocation of public funds. I would suggest to members of this chamber that they would need it the most. Furthermore, whilst this motion claims to care about pensioners, let's be honest. It seems to me that this is a politically motivated move to get some members in this chamber to vote against the government. And I'm trying to understand the arguments being put forward by some members. And in my opinion, none of these arguments so far are a barrier for implementing means testing, rather proof that funding needs to be put into other areas of the system. And rather than focusing on improving the system, instead of rejecting means testing outright, the proposer could have suggested refinements to the policy or outlined where they believe the threshold should be set. Furthermore, this would have been a constructive contribution to the debate. Furthermore, continuing to fund a universal payment goes no way to addressing the stigma that the proposer mentions in his speech. Were the Conservative group as vocal when the previous Tory governments introduced universal credit, impacting 6.8 million people? Or when they implemented the two-child tax limit? Or what about the benefits cap, personal independence payments cuts, employment and support allowance cuts, cuts to social services, the ongoing cuts that Hampshire County Council to Children's and Adult Services? The answer, no. So in my opinion, it's hypocritical of the Conservatives to suggest that public money should continue to be given to those who do not need it, while at the same time watching their pals at HEC making harmful cuts, stating that these are absolutely necessary due to a lack of public funding. Handing over money to the likes of Boris Johnson's dad, Tony Blair, or any of the 29% of all pensioners with an average wealth of over £1 million makes no sense, when the country has been left in a poor financial state thanks to the previous Conservative government. It is hard-working families, especially those with children, who are most likely to be living in freezing conditions this winter, and it's why I cannot support this motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gavin James.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The decision to withdraw the winter fuel allowance was a mistake. I listened to an identical motion in Hampshire County Council. There we had to declare an interest, and anyone retired had to stand up. Most of them couldn't, to be honest. Those defending the decision do what they always do. They did it there, they've just done it now. They list all the millionaires who get the payment. I don't know how many pensioner millionaires there are in Basingstoke, but they do get the payment. It's annoying. What they never do is list the people who are just above the threshold that will now be much poorer because they've lost their payment. What they never do is list the people who have houses that are really difficult and expensive to heat because of their design. What they never do is list all the people in the borough who have health problems, where just losing a few degrees means they're going to go into hospital and cost tens of thousands of pounds. Perhaps these people don't matter, but they do exist. Winter fuel payments going to millionaires is annoying, taking the winter fuel payments allowance away from thousands of pensioners in Basingstoke and Deane who are in those categories of just above the threshold, health conditions, drafty houses. That's really painful. The government could have taken time to come up with a far fairer and better approach that protected the most vulnerable, and they will never understand why they chose to announce this cut straight away instead. It was a rush, it didn't need to be a rush. So I will support the motion. What I will do as well is, because the motion, sending a letter to the government may work, whether they'll ever read it or not, there's various things that are requested in the motion, but I also think we as councillors should do a call for action. So what I'm going to say is to any residents who live in East Ropham Grove, Brighton Hill, Tadley, Borghurst and Kingsclear, Tadley South and Pamber, if you think that you may be entitled to pension credit, but you don't know how to go online to check, please contact your local Lib Dem councillor and we'll support you and help you work out whether you're eligible and get you in contact with an agency that can support you all the way through the process. We'll do that as an additional action because that will make a real difference, more difference in this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ibrahim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like first to start with acknowledging the importance of acknowledging those pensioners who fall just outside the threshold who will be impacted by this. In the meantime, we have seen the Labour government have taken measures to actually help those who will be impacted, including the triple lock on the state pension, the Warm Homes Plan, but also they have committed 7.1 million to Hampshire County Council, specifically for their household support. Will this money be used actually to help those impacted? Unfortunately, Hampshire County Council administration, which is Conservative, just to remind you, has no interest in prioritising those who will be impacted at all. Despite many suggestions by other group councillors to actually prioritise those just above the threshold, they came back and they said no, because they don't believe, I think, that these people need help. So the resources are out there, but the Conservative administration, Hampshire County Council, where my colleague Aaron, who put the motion forward, is part of, refused it. And actually I find it ironic and perhaps even misleading to our residents that Councillor Aaron is presenting this motion today, despite the fact that he had the opportunity to advocate his own administration, County Council, to make a provision for those who are, especially those who are falling just above the threshold of the set by the government. But he didn't. One last thing, if you look at the actions listed in this motion, they are actually either already underway as part of the council duties, or some of them is beyond the council ability and authority to influence. So I see this as a bit of a political spin from the Conservative colleagues to just try to wind up the constituency and us, but perhaps it also does lack any genuine intention to support our residents. And just underline, just pointing out, many of these already underway. It's part of the council work to advocate and help people in need, signpost them. And not surprised that the Lib Dem is supporting the motion, because they don't need to do something else to help, because it's already underway. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I got Councillor Basson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wasn't planning to speak tonight on this particular issue, but Councillor Lees encouraged me. In my opinion, I think the phrase is IMHO, this chamber is not for debating Westminster policy. It's about how we react locally to that policy. I'm not religious, but the chaplain was right. It's about how we treat our poor. It is within our gift in this chamber and this council to help our residents access their statutory, legal, monetary entitlements. And it's within our gift to help encourage them to do that and access that. I'm not sure about the petition in the motion. Sorry, Aaron, I haven't had a chance to read the petition yet. But well done, Aaron. I'll be supporting this motion. And I support this council in helping residents access their social entitlements. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I have only 4.5 minutes remaining. And I would like those speakers who have given intention to be very quick indeed. So, Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this motion, Mr. Mayor. I will be brief. I wanted to add to what Councillor Slimmon said. The income cut-off for pension credit is £11,300 per annum. That's less than £1,000 per month. And I think we should think of all those pensioners, not thinking of the rich, as Councillor Gavin James said. Unlike what Councillor Lee says, a lot of work in my ward is working with our parishes and community centres to establish warm hubs. Pensioners in our ward are rightly worried about whether they're going to be able to afford to heat their homes this winter. That isn't politics, that is a sad reality. I'm going to support this motion, Mr. Mayor, and I will finish off. I hope my colleagues will put displaced party loyalties aside. And what I want to do is I want to direct my colleagues to an excellent scheme called Hitting the Cold Spots, which is run by Hampshire County Council in combination with the voluntary sector. Get in touch with me or your county councillors and they can put you in touch with that scheme.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The amount that you get from pension credit, if you're eligible, is £3,100 a year, which is considerable if you're on a £12,000 or £13,000 a year pension income. I'm not averse to supporting the principle of having a look at people who are just above the threshold. I had people approach me at surgeries. My dad's a pensioner. He says he doesn't need it and he doesn't want it. There are approximately 3 million millionaire pensioners in the country. The motion cites 2 million affected. There are 3 million who are millionaires. Some of them serve on Hampshire County Council, and it's a bit of an unedifying spectacle seeing them go on about £300 a year that they can do without when they're cutting services. We've got 4 million children in poverty. Nobody's talking about them. And frankly, when we look at the track record of past Tory government, the price cap was at £2,800 a year under Boris, and then it went up to £3,577 a year under Liz Truss. That £300 a year didn't even touch the sides. And these benches to my left were silent on that issue, and now they're scaremongering when fuel prices are half what they were 2 years ago. And pension incomes are going up. They're going up the triple lock, and they'll be going up by £400 a new year.
Councillor
So
McCormick,
I
got
can't
only
support
1
this
minute,
motion.
51 seconds, and I got another speaker.
Yeah, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howard Searle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also wasn't going to speak, but we've had some good arguments from the Lib Dems tonight. It would be better if we were doing as Councillor Bowell suggested. I don't know if we can vote on that amendment. I will happily second it if we can. We also heard from Councillor Lee that this isn't a motion that he can support because billionaires exist who will get this pension, this winter fuel payment. But the winter fuel payment is a safety net. Not to be dramatic, but your argument is reminiscent of those in favour of the death penalty in the United States. You'd rather a few innocent people...
Please, will you be quiet, please? Will you be quiet in the chamber?
You'd rather a few innocent people be executed at the hands of this Labour government in order to ensure no guilty people go free. In context, you'd rather many less affluent pensioners don't receive their payment to ensure a few affluent ones don't get the money. It's a poor argument in the States and it's a poor argument here. I'd expect better from a Labour government, and I'd expect better personally from the Labour councillors in this room. We also heard earlier that those in this chamber are often put in the unenviable position of having to support the bad decisions of their national party. But here's a neat secret. You aren't born Labour or Tory, it's a choice. If you dislike the national decisions, don't keep supporting them. You're all welcome to come and join us on this side of the chamber. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I would come back to Councillor Bowes. Would you repeat your amendment?
The amendment was to add to point 4 at the end that, excuse me, find my place. A request to government to provide charities with the necessary funding to accomplish this. Thank you.
Thank you. And it is seconded by Councillor Howard Searle. And would the proposer and seconder accept agree to the amendment?
Yes, I do.
Agreed, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Councillor Ganesh, would you agree to it?
Agreed, Mr. Mayor.
Agree. And you are would you like to say anything? Yeah?
Agreed, Mr. Mayor. We are, as rightly said, we are a borough council and we are not here to tell central government what to do and what's the right thing to do. When central government doesn't act what needs to be done, we have to act. For example, like one of our councillors mentioned, the cost of living crisis. When we had this cost of living crisis, as a compassionate, conservative administration, we have introduced COLAF and help who need it. So what we are trying to say is we need to represent our residents within the borough when the central government doesn't do the right thing. Because we are in the situation today, it's simply because we don't have representation in Parliament to represent the pensioners who's worked all their life, who paid all their taxes. All they want is just live peacefully in this borough. So this government's decision will have impact on at least 14,000 people in the Basingstoke town alone. So I don't want to go into detail. Enough has been said. So what I can suggest is just 2 points. So the pensioners who don't claim pension credit are particularly in risk, and not everyone can claim it. For example, if you are a couple, one is above the pension age and one is not, that household may not be able to qualify and claim the pension credit. There are about 60,000 people around the country. This was set by Age UK. I don't know who this government consulted before introduced these policies, but Age UK had said there are about 60,000. I'm sure there will be some in our borough will have the same situation. And if you speak to Martin Lewis, the money saving expert, he has said 800,000 people will be applying for this pension credit. But this incompetent Labour government's capacity at the moment is only about 20,000 people who can deal with those applications. So it'll take 40 months, it'll take 4 winters to deal with pension credit. So are we really going to let all these 800,000 people to suffer 4 winters before they apply and get entitlement of this pension credit? No, we shouldn't be. So as an administration or as a cabinet, we do the right thing by writing the government. Doesn't matter if it's the Chancellor or Prime Minister or Lord Ali, whoever runs this country. We just need to write to the right people and make sure we do get enough support for our vulnerable residents and do the right thing. I hope everyone around the chamber will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I come to Councillor Muma Laneni. You have 5 minutes to sum up.
Thank you very much, Mayor. First of all, I would like to request a recorded vote on this, Mr. Mayor. Please note this. Before I forget it.
It will be an electronic vote.
Yeah, thank you. Which will be recorded. Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you very much, Councillor Bow. I welcome your amendment. And Councillor Simon, so you have enlightened me with your insight about various data points and how much it impacts to various people. What does it mean? Right. Now I would like to put my fellow councillor, Councillor Ibrahim, right about my Hampshire County Council role, councillor role. Your 7.1 million which you promised to the Hampshire Council giving, that is not new. That's been there. That's been there for every year.
Please no talking over the speaker.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Doesn't matter.
So the people who are talking are not in the chamber, and my colleague who knows it is exactly, he's also a county councillor. Please, Mayor, when I'm talking, please, it is a respect.
Yes,
what we
please
need.
have respect for the speaker. I don't want anybody else speaking over.
Right. So that 7.51 million, which he is boasting about, it is for the vulnerable people who are on the low income, not for the special grant which is giving it, which they boast about it. That's what the fact is. Now, this 7.1 million, now Councillor Lee says that we need to look after 4 million kids, 6 million kids, which I don't really remember it. Do we need to give the 7.1 million to those kids, or to the new people, 2 million people, or more thousands of people in Hampshire residents who are just above the pension, who have been receiving this credit before this government? So I don't know whom to justify it, right? And now, this fuel payments, the Councillor McCormick was saying that, yes, the fuel bills, what happened, Mr. Mayor? Which has gone up exactly in October month, and which he says that, which is off of it from the previous 1 year, but it's not. It's gone up now. We don't know what is going to happen from January onwards. And once again, thank you to the opposite councillors who came across the party lines here to support this motion. And still, my Labour councillors are still thinking that it is a political motion and still thinks that they want to oppose it. Let them do it. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Now we're going to have, we are going to take the vote. Electronic vote, please. Everyone voted, the motion is carried.
I noticed the next item on the agenda is relating to housing. Now, I'm suspecting most of the people at the back of the room are possibly here for slightly colder sports. Bear in mind the last bus is fairly soon. I don't know whether it would be appropriate and decent for our residents to switch the motions round and bring the ice rink motion forward and put the housing one back.
Councillor, thank you very much indeed for bringing that. And, yes, it's for
Were you housing?
really
Sorry.
bring that forward, yeah.
You can stay anyway. What?
I would like to bring the motion at number 14 about the ice rink forward.
Do you announce the vote?
Sorry, I would ask for a vote in a minute, yeah. So can I ask for a vote on that? Is that agreed or? Agreed. So that's agreed. So Councillor Dillo, would you like to propose your motion?
Already said it was carried.
I've already said it carried. Okay. Councillor Dillo.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Tonight I present a motion as set out in the updates that challenges this council administration to stand by its promises. The Liberal and Independent administration has repeatedly told us that they want to keep ice in Basingstoke. You have said, we hear you, to our passionate ice skaters, ice hockey players and community, but now it's time to step up, it's time to prove it. Basingstoke Ice Rink is not just a sports facility, it's a lifeline for many. It fosters friendships, nurtures mental and physical health, and provides a space where people of all ages come together and pursue their passions. When this rink closes for refurbishment, there will be nowhere for our skaters and hockey players to go. They will be forced to travel long distances, bearing the cost and losing their local sanctuary. The professional coaches who depend on this rink for their livelihoods will suffer, and the local businesses that thrive from the rink's footfall will take a hit. Basingstoke and Deane is one of the richest councils in the country. We have the financial means to solve this problem. We can choose to prioritise our community by funding a temporary ice rink. But if we do nothing, what are we saying? That we don't care about the mental health of our youth? That we don't value the local businesses that rely on this facility? That promises to keep ice in Basingstoke are just empty words? Councillor Harvey and your administration, tonight this is more than just a motion. It's a test of your priorities and your integrity. You need to ask yourselves, do you support our residents? Do you stand by your commitments to support the ice rink community? Council, let's show Basingstoke that we hear them, truly hear them, and act. Let's keep ice in Basingstoke and make sure no one in this community is left out in the cold. I urge you all to support this motion, which asks the Cabinet to decide the future of our ice rink community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dillo. Councillor Lee, do you wish to second this and speak now, or do you wish to reserve the right to speak to the motion at a later stage?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I will be.
Stand up, please.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I will be seconding it, but I reserve my right, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I get it. I understand what it means to really care about something and fight for it. But I'm sorry this motion is ill-conceived and fiscally irresponsible. I would like to congratulate Mr. Stuart Tempest. Chair of Basingstoke Junior Bisons and admin of the Facebook Ice Users Group, for getting this motion to full council. He has done an amazing job of keeping this important issue in the papers and on the agenda. He has helped committee with information. He deserves the congratulations of all ice users in Basingstoke. Our community needs people like you. Thank you. Of course, he's not a councillor and has no register of interests or conflicts to disclose. So in the interests of complete transparency, I'll do that piece of homework for him. He is registered at Company's House as the majority shareholder and sole director of ProSkate Limited, which I believe is the skate equipment shop at the rink. So in addition to all of his social, sport and community motivations, one could reasonably speculate that he stands to lose his income if the rink closes for any length of time. I have huge sympathy for his position, but I wonder if this is part of the reason he relentlessly pursues a temporary rink rather than entertains other, perhaps more viable solutions. Put up or shut up? Spot on, Councillor Dillo. This issue has consumed large amounts of council time. The temporary rink has been researched and been through committee. I supported Councillor Lee's motion, a good motion, a reasonable motion. I voted for that. This matter was thoroughly explored at Resident Services Committee. Officers have spent a lot of time on the matter. I watched the webcast, and we owe a debt to officers, the chair and members of the committee who did an excellent job on lessons learned, recommendations and scrutiny of the history. However, it seemed to me that committee rejected the temporary ice rink proposal. So this motion is a dead rubber, and I think Councillors Dillo and Lee know that, and they should be more mindful of council time. On the financials, broadly, £2 million of revenue cost means roughly £100,000 a year less in investment income every year in perpetuity. I always do the investment appraisal. This one comes out at £6.5 million of opportunity cost in today's money. For a proposal that serves about 2,000 people, or 1% of the borough, that's equivalent to a value transfer of £1,000 to every Basingstoke skater, paid for by £28.57 out of every other resident's pocket. We could just go and post £1,000 cheques to every 35th dwelling. On top of that, the lost investment income alone would be covered by adding £1.43 on everyone's council tax forever. For 6 to 12 months of temporary rink, that is quite a commitment. Shakespeare's Tempest explores themes of reality versus illusion. In our production, the temporary rink is an illusion cast by those who cannot accept reality. Vote for this motion tonight, and I will be like Banquo's ghost, a spectre at every occasion, reminding everyone of your susceptibility to illusion and your inability to exercise proper financial and operational judgment on behalf of residents. Your inability to accept reality. Let's just revisit that 1% and Shakespeare's theme. Councillor Dillo talks of communities and priorities. There are many worthy causes in our borough. I take my daughter to Dungeons and Dragons Club. We have a vibrant fantasy RPG community in Basingstoke with over 1,100 members on the local meetup group and 2 venues at the top of the town that regularly provide events almost every evening. I refer back to the motion with a little artistic licence. These are more than just a gaming venue. They are a unique community hub where people of all ages gather to build friendships, support their physical and mental well-being, and enjoy activities such as casting spells and slaying monsters. This is lifted from the motion and adapted for a fantasy context. And the point is, substitute temporary ice rink for temporary dragon's lair and imagine the persuasion and charisma that I would need to bring that motion to cast that £6 million illusion on 53 of you in this chamber. If these gamers get organised, perhaps next time we'll be greeted by ghouls and goblins demonstrating outside the council offices. Summing up, Mr Mayor, responsible councillors put the whole community first. This council is full of good councillors. Tonight, we find out how many are responsible councillors. Personally, I think this motion is a fantasy, and I hope it's going to be voted down quite heavily this evening. I would like a recorded vote, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Gavin James.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This motion is possibly the most offensive motion we've ever heard in this council chamber. It's an amazing strategy. Now, I supported the original motion. We had a similar request. I supported it because I wanted to listen to the wisdom of the whole council. We agreed for it to go to committee to be discussed. This motion says shut up or put up. It says don't listen to other councillors, do something. That's offensive to me because obviously you made a commitment to listen. Following the previous motion, Resident Services Committee have been seeking information, debating it and moving towards a recommendation. This motion suggests, because you want to start again, you don't value the work of that committee and you're on it. That's really offensive to that committee and I hope they pick up on you next time. This motion also asks officers to investigate the costs, something they have already done. You're saying they didn't do well enough, they didn't get the answer you wanted. That's really offensive to our officers. So this is your strategy, Councillor Dillo. Step 1, offend the administration whose support you absolutely need. Step 2, offend the committee that can persuade the administration. Step 3, offend the officers who can make it happen. That's a very strange strategy. The fact is, supporting the original ice rink, I turned up at the meeting. I went there. And when officers came back and said the base cost was just over £2 million, I was surprised. It was about 8 times what I expected it to be. And the committee must have felt the same because they asked officers to go away, get the minimum specifications from the Ice Users Forum, and Stuart Tempest did provide that very helpfully and very quickly, and then to go away and update the costings. When it came back, it made little difference. We're still talking about £2 million, and that didn't include preparation of the car park and reinstatement of the 2 lampposts we need to move, the tree, and also some of the verges. At the same time, we also had an estimated timescales from Planet Ice, indicating following closure, the rink could be open within 6 months, with users back on the ice, some users back on the ice, within 4 months. And this matters. If we'd started procurement before the future of the ice rink is secured, we may never have used the temporary ice rink because the ice rink would delay closure. If the ice rink closes in the coming weeks, it'll probably reopen before we can set up a temporary ice rink, so we'll never use it. I understand how important ice sports are to our borough. I've heard, and I genuinely listen to those who have attended committee over the years. I've heard how for many it's a second home, a community as much as a sport, and the ice is an escape from difficulties they may have in the normal world. I was touched by a story of a mother who talked about how her daughter's mental health improves when she's on the ice, and it does touch me. I also recognise the wealth of talent we've developed locally, and it's why securing the long-term future of the ice rink has been something the property team and I have discussed more than any other topic and continue to do so. However, we have to balance that against our responsibilities. The council's money is our residents' money. We are simply the guardians. We have a duty to make sure every pound is spent well on our core services. I am not convinced £2 million on a temporary ice facility we probably never use is that, and therefore I can't support the motion.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know councillors in this room support keeping ice in Basingstoke. We have all made that very, very clear, and we also support the restoration of the rink. The truth of the matter is that officers have moved heaven and earth to secure a way forward for the ice rink, one that will secure its future. None of us should fault the effort, commitment and time that has been put in by our professional officer team to get this situation resolved. And that's the point, to get the situation resolved. That effort has been directed by our desire as an administration to keep ice on the leisure park. There has been and is a clear steer from us. We made sure that ice was a part of the new leisure centre options in case. However, Planet Ice have now stepped up. But this is a private operation, a commercial operator, on land that we own with contractual obligations that have been subject to much negotiation. Yes, we recognise the importance it has to its user community. You cannot miss that. Put Facebook to one side and just talk to the people who have come to committee and meetings over the years and shared their life stories and experiences. That's how real it genuinely is, and we recognise that, which is why we have put so much effort into the issue of its future. The motion seeks to secure a temporary ice rink, but it does not appreciate this council's wider responsibilities. Asking for roughly £2 million in revenue funding is hugely significant. It is one of the largest single revenue commitments, aside from our waste collections, this council would make. Its impact on council's finances would not be temporary. it would be lasting. Our first duty is to frontline services and our statutory responsibilities. We have closed the budget gaps to ensure that this council is on a stable footing. We also don't know what the new government's financial settlements for councils will be. Both parties opposite go on about financial management, a stable economy and being fiscally responsible. There is no magic money tree for everything you all want. This council is on a solid financial position, but that's something that doesn't happen by accident. Our officers work hard to ensure that, unlike other councils, we are not making cuts to services our residents rely on. We inherited a stable financial position from the previous administration. They inherited it from the administration before them. There is a reason why Basingstoke is unlike any other council. It's because we do what we can with what we have sensibly and we don't risk our financial position. If we have to fine £2 million in revenue, it will have consequences. After significant investment in frontline services, we should not reduce our reserves further than what is planned in the upcoming budget and MTFS, because further reductions in reserves of this size would be putting that hard-earned stability at risk. You can't keep dipping into the reserves for things that are not core services or our responsibilities. If you seek to prioritise a temporary ice rink over core service priorities, then we risk undermining the work of the council. I'm sorry, but sometimes you just have to say no, we cannot do that. The alternative is that we reduce discretionary services, such as our events programme or our business support or our work on climate change or making the Green Team permanent. Grants to charities and voluntary groups all would have to be cut, and more, and I'm not willing to support that. This is not alarmist, it's the truth. If you want to create the headroom for £2 million in revenue, which is not saying we don't support ICE or the ICE users in Basingstoke, because we're getting the deal done to renew the ice rink. But we have a responsibility to all our other residents, the nearly 5,000 on the housing register, or all those who needed that investment in frontline services to improve the quality of the place they love, or our charities, or our voluntary groups that we fund, or our business community. Colleagues, we need to be sensible. We want to see the ice rink repaired, and that is our focus. The deal is agreed, and we are now waiting on the legals to complete. We are working to ensure the ice rink is renewed as quickly as it can be. That is our absolute focus.
Thank you. I have got for 6 speakers, and I have got only 6 minutes 52 seconds. So if everybody is going to be short, then I'll allow Councillor McCormick to speak, but very quick, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hadn't intended to speak on this, but I am really actually quite annoyed by what's been said on the other side of the chamber tonight and the contempt it shows to the residents outside. The only thing I would say about point 5 on this motion is, without a temporary solution, the community will be forced to travel distances. They already are. I spoke to somebody outside tonight. They're already travelling 80, 90-mile round trips to take children to practice before school, and they're absolutely tired out before they even start a school's day. This is a test to this administration, quite frankly. Is it a protest group that says, we're with you when they're in opposition, and when they get in power, they slam the door? Or are they actually going to step up and meet expectations of residents and deliver for them? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Much of the history surrounding the ice rink predates my time as a councillor. What stands out to me is the clear reluctance of this administration to provide a temporary ice facility. There was a remark made by one of the independent cabinet members in this very chamber 2 years ago, apparently one of their favourite quotes. When the situation changes, I change my position. I believe that sums up this administration perfectly, because it's actually made up. The actual quote attributed to John Maynard Keynes is, when the facts change, I change my mind. But returning to their position, their version, when the situation changes, I change my position. They've shifted their position now. Now that they're in administration, the facts haven't changed, only their position has. It's disappointing to see promises to our community set aside so readily. I want to commend Councillors Dillow and Lee. They've put politics aside for the sake of our community. As councillors, we're all meant to uphold the Nolan principles, one of which is integrity. Integrity is paramount to me. It's been ingrained in who I am through years in the military. And it's about doing the right thing even when no one is watching. It's not about making empty promises for petty political gain. I'm going to support this motion because this administration needs to demonstrate integrity. This administration needs to honour the promises it made to our community. Providing a temporary ice rink isn't just about maintaining a facility. It's about supporting the well-being of our residents, preserving livelihoods and fostering the spirit of our town. Let's show our residents that we stand by our word. Let's keep ice in Basingstoke.
Councillor Minnesbaum.
I'll keep it very short, Mr. Mayor. It is about change. I have sat in the hot seat that Councillor Harvey currently occupies. It is about change. I want to thank Councillor Harvey in the hope that he will listen to what Councillor Lee and Councillor Dillow have done to change our thoughts in this council. Sitting from this side of the chamber, the one thing I would like to apologise to the ice rink users for is, in administration, and I can see it in opposition, sometimes we ask the wrong question. This motion asks the Cabinet to think about asking a different question. Make a decision about how much you would spend and to see what we can deliver by working with the ice users. See it from a different perspective. I certainly can. No, I'm in opposition.
Councillor Ibrahim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like first to start to propose an amendment to the motion to remove the to put up or shut up wording from the motion, so I can support it. And I just very quickly on a couple of points that have been said. That really made me what I've heard from our colleagues earlier. That really made me think who actually take the position or a decision around prioritising what the borough needs, what services and facilities should be there. I've always thought residents have a very strong voice on this. We reflect what residents need. And if residents keep coming and ice rink users keep coming, this is not first time. I don't know how many times they need to come out there, stand out there, sending us emails, trying to engage, and we're still not listening to them. There is a need for this, and this is a service that our residents see as a priority, and we have the resources. Money is out there to be used in favour of our residents, for service for them, not to be saved for later. I'm supporting this motion. Thank you.
I have got just 2 minutes and I've got 2 speakers. So Councillor Ganesh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very quick. Councillor Kevin James was right. This was debated in the chamber and committees in the past, and we've listened to all the talk from Council Leader Paul Harvey and every member from the Cabinet and all the members. And we have heard, and the Councillor Paul Harvey, the leader, Cabinet, everyone committed to keep ice in Basingstoke. Not once, not twice, multiple times. It's easy to do all the talk just before election and do press releases for the media. But we had enough talking the talk, okay? Now it's time to walk the walk and prove. You mean what you say in this chamber. You mean what you say in committee members or committee meetings to the members. So this is about time to prove with integrity that what you mean was true and deliver on your promises. Thank you, and hopefully you will be supporting this motion.
Councillor Moro, you got 47 seconds.
Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. When you raise a motion, you have a responsibility to fully consider the impact on the council you represent. You also have a responsibility to accept the facts and figures that are put in front of you. I've been on both those committees and I've seen the facts and figures, and as much as I love sport, as much as I went to the Ozone to get another person's view on ice hockey in this, how Basingstoke, how important ice hockey is in Basingstoke, I can't support this motion just due to the size of the impact on our council, the financial impact on our council. And I would like councillors in this room to understand.
Councillor Lee, now it's your turn to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council is unequivocally committed to the provision of a new ice rink as a part of its and its partner, New River Retail, plans for a new leisure park, a rink big enough to accommodate the Basingstoke Bison. In the short to medium term, the Council also commits to securing the provision of a temporary ice rink in the borough. May 2019, Councillor Paul Harvey, which was a motion that, had it been successful in allowing to go through, unfortunately it was deemed inappropriate because it would have meant that the council would have spent money there and then. It would have been supported by at least 3 members of the administration today, because they were in this, they were part of the Labour administration, or the Labour opposition at the time. It's more than likely to have been supported by the Lib Dems at the time, because they were in opposition to the Tories at the time and wanted to give the Tories a kick in, like we all do. We are committed to investing in sports facilities in the borough to enable our sporting stars, from those playing and performing at the highest level to those just setting out on their sporting journey, to have the best opportunities to thrive and succeed. The Cabinet Member for Sports, in February of this year, after announcing funding for grass or field hockey. So what is the difference? A sport that has been left just because it is played in a private building. Does that make it a sport that should not be considered any funding? I don't think it should. I think we should invest in our sports, all of our sports, whether that be bowls, whether that be paddle boarding in the Basingstoke Canal. My sport that I enjoy, that my son has played on a Saturday morning, is ice hockey. We've invested in 5.2 million, I think it was, at the time that the Conservatives were in administration, in sport across the borough. Not a penny to ice hockey. And what we're doing is we're allowing kids in this borough, young kids, 10-year-olds, to travel outside to Gosport, to Swindon, to Guildford, to Oxford, getting back late at night. Not just 8 o'clock at night, we're talking about 10, 11 o'clock, midnight at times, on school nights. We're asking for a temporary ice rink to support them, to ensure that they have got a place to go, to ensure their mental welfare. And there's been a lot of ifs placed on by Councillor James on, if the ice rink was to reopen after we started on the temporary rink. It's a big if, Councillor James. What if they find that the pad is too expensive to repair? At least if we had an ice rink, a temporary ice rink, we could come up with a solution to that problem then. But we can't when they decide to close it there and then. I'd actually just like to end, Mr. Mayor, with Councillor Basham. He said that he'd watched the webcast. I think he's maybe high on magic at the time. The committee actually resolved to recommend to Cabinet that the Cabinet to explore ways to support the ice users and to proactively explore what can be done to provide a temporary ice rink, including what financial impact this would have. It's in the minutes. I think, again, like I said, you were high on the magic at the time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Ibrahim, would you like to repeat your amendment?
Yes, please. I would like to propose removing the wording in the, sorry, just 1 second, at the start of the motion, to remove "to put up" or "shut up," just for the interest of the cohesive of the group and respect. Are you?
Is that seconded? Oh, all right. And Councillor Dillo, you agree with that? Yes. Is that agreed? Councillor Harvey.
Just wanted to speak to the amendment just for a moment, Mr. Mayor, if I can. I'm very conscious of what this chamber has debated this evening and all of the comments that's been passed, all of the passion on all sides. I don't think... Of course you can. You've moved an amendment. We're about to vote on it. I'm speaking to the amendment. Of course I can.
He can speak on the amendment.
It's a brand new debate.
And others can as well.
You know, we talk about respect to the ICE users and they deserve it. Let's have respect to everybody else in the chamber, everybody. All right? I have a right to speak to the amendment and I have a right to address the chamber. At least let me do that with some dignity. Thank you. This is an important issue. It's also a very emotive issue and I respect that. I've stood outside with the ICE users. And yes, Councillor Lee, I've fought for them as much as you have and others have. And in fact, to be fair, you fought over the years, I would say much harder than I have in that respect, and I respect that, because you absolutely live and breathe this for your son and your family. I respect that, and so will Councillor Dillo. But there's a truth here, all right? Back in 2019, this council's finances would have been in a very different position, and don't forget that's pre-pandemic. We face in local government some of the most difficult challenges we've got coming. And yes, it's going to be very testing on your government, because you're going to have to decide whether or not you choose to support local government now with money that we don't have. Money like Hampshire County Council desperately needs, because at the moment it's £170 million in deficit. Now today you've got Angela Rayner fighting in the Cabinet, allegedly if you believe the news, for the 20% cuts that the MHCLG are looking like they're facing. So councils are going to start falling over pretty quickly if that's the reality of it, and I hope it's not. So the sensible debate is around what this council can actually do to help our sports, yes. Many of those sports that don't have the luxury of buildings, that don't have private operators that support them. The put up and shut up bit is really important. I think there is a sensible, logical way forward to support the ICE users in the way I think we all want to, but that does not cross the line of putting this council's finances at risk when it is a commercial operator's aspect that we have to take into account. It is a commercial business. If we choose to support them in that way, where do we draw the line? Who do we say no to next? Who do we refuse to help next when those other commercial operators come to us as a public authority asking for our money to support them in their private businesses? There is an important line here to be thought through, which is not to say you don't support the ICE users. It is not to say you do not deliver all the hard work, and I really want to say this again, all the hard work the officer team have done working behind the scenes that doesn't involve us as councillors, but involves them working with Planet Ice and Standard Securities to get the deal done to get the ice rink refurbished. That's the prize. So I stand to speak again because the put up and shut up element is not good. But we have to be aware of the reality of our decisions, and this has consequences. It really, really does. I ask you to think carefully about it. And if you do choose to vote against the motion, you are not voting against the ICE users, and you are not voting against the ice rink. You're voting to protect this council's finances. That is our argument.
Thank you. And anybody else who is going to speak, I would ask you to speak only on the amendment, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will.
Councillor Muniz-Bound first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will speak very specifically and very succinctly. This motion asks the Cabinet to do one thing, which I think will help all sports enthusiasts, teams, people who require funding and use our facilities, for a decision. Nothing more, nothing less. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to clarify as well, I believe the motion is not about supporting a commercial operator. It's about the council providing a temporary ice facility. So that's just important to be clarified. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have got Councillor Dillo. You have 5 minutes to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I must say I'm truly heartened by my colleagues' comments and also the cross-party support from Labour and particularly Councillor Lee. I appreciate it. but I'm deeply disappointed with some of the comments I've heard from the other side of the chamber, I'm afraid. We've heard tonight from an administration that talks about promises of support in the past, but is now reticent to act on these promises. They've inferred it's too expensive, yet according to the BDI manifesto, we are one of the wealthiest councils in the country. Our residents expect better. Basingstoke deserves better. This motion is not about financial irresponsibility. It's about priorities and making the right decisions for our residents and fulfilling promises made. We should be able to have it all: thriving businesses, vibrant sports communities, and support for our youth. Why should we settle for less? The administration says they want to keep ice in Basingstoke, but if they don't support this motion, it will prove to be an empty promise and proof that Cabinet doesn't even want to make a decision on this issue. Mr. Mayor, I request a recorded vote so all our residents and the ice community know who truly stands with them and who is willing to turn their backs. Council, let's show Basingstoke where our hearts and priorities lie. Let's keep ice in Basingstoke and vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now I would call for an electronic vote. So, councillors, please vote. Motion is lost. We got yes and no, so yeah, that's it.
Not go on forever, just sitting there waiting for the rink to be fixed.
Just move on to the next item. Sorry? Move on to the next item. Yes. Now we come to the next item, which is item 13, rejecting Labour's imposed housing targets. Councillor McIntyre to propose this motion, and you have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise today not as a political adversary, but as an individual deeply concerned about the future of our borough. The Labour government's imposed 37% increase in our housing targets, as 1,137 homes per year, is not just a number on a page. It's a profound threat to the character, infrastructure and environmental integrity of Basingstoke and Deane. This isn't about partisan bickering or scoring political points. When we had a Conservative government and administration, I stood here and voiced my concerns about overdevelopment and the erosion of our strategic gaps. My stance has not changed. The question is, has yours? The leader often speaks of collaboration and working together for the common good. Well, today presents an opportunity for all 54 of us to unite and express our red lines. Let's make it clear that we, as a council, stand against arbitrary housing targets that disregard the will of our residents and the limitations of our infrastructure. The proposal for new towns, as defined by government policy, involves creating communities of at least 10,000 homes. To put that into perspective, that's a new settlement double the size of Tadley and Boghurst combined, or the equivalent of merging Whitchurch and Overton. Such developments are not a solution to our own local housing needs. They're a reckless gamble with the future of our borough. Some may dismiss concerns about new towns as scaremongering, but let's refer directly to the government's own policy statement. This government's New Towns programme will include large-scale new communities built on greenfield land and separated from other nearby settlements. Each of the new settlements will contain at least 10,000 homes. These are not fabricated figures. They are the government's stated intentions. I know that many of you share my passion for preserving the unique character of our communities. I don't want to see the area of outstanding natural beauty in Whitchurch threatened. I don't want Bramley overwhelmed by unsustainable housing developments. And I certainly don't agree with suggestions to focus all greenfield development on the southwest of Basingstoke with haste, as one Basingstoke Independent Cabinet member believes. I too believe that Old Basing should not be absorbed into an ever-expanding urban sprawl, but our approach should not be to sacrifice one area to protect another. We must protect our rivers and chalk streams, vital parts of our natural heritage. Former Labour Group leader Councillor McCormick rightly asked whether Councillor Harvey had consulted our new Labour MP Luke Murphy, who it has been suggested has the ear of senior ministers. Well, this is our chance to come together across party lines and make a unified stand. Let's show Luke and the government that these proposals are not in the best interests of our borough. If we accept these imposed targets without challenge, we face having to start our local planning process from start. This would not only delay essential developments, but also leave us vulnerable to speculative, unplanned construction that benefits no one. Our residents expect us to be stewards of this borough, to safeguard its future while meeting genuine local needs. We have a duty to ensure that any growth is sustainable, measured, and in harmony with the wishes of those who call Basingstoke and Dean home. In closing, I urge each of you to support this motion. Let's set aside political differences and send a clear message to the government. We cannot accept housing targets that disregard our capacity, our environment, and the will of our residents. Together, we can advocate for a planning approach that truly reflects the needs and values of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I remind members that there are 20 minutes to debate the motion? And Councillor Vo, do you wish to second this and speak now, or do you wish to speak later, reserve the right to speak later?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak now, please. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'm sure that we all agree that we need more homes for people living in our borough and for their families. We need more social and affordable housing, especially with our current cost of living pressures and high mortgage costs. I am therefore supporting this motion because we must build the right homes in the right places where we need them. We must have a deliverable plan which protects and nurtures our communities and stops the developers' dreams of increasing the urban sprawl, inexorably swallowing up villages and hamlets. We particularly feel this keenly around Chinham, a village which was surrounded in green spaces and is now completely enclosed by housing and the congested A33. We are now part of Basingstoke town, and the green fields continue to disappear. Orham Green, Vine Park, 4 phases of Redlands, east of Basingstoke, Upper Cufford Farm, Sheffield Hill Farm, Goddard's Farm, Dixon Road, the list goes on. Thousands of houses, not a penny spent so far on improving Chinham medical practice, no extra dentists, no extra schools. My mum always told me that actions speak louder than words. The new government promises us improved infrastructure alongside the additional houses we are required to build. I see nothing in the draft NPPF to make this happen. I also hear the leader of this council saying that we should work together to achieve the best outcomes for our residents. Who would disagree with that? However, I was not consulted, nor were the residents I represent consulted on the response the Cabinet submitted in our names. How is that working together? The biggest misrepresentation for me is around new towns, saying that we and I quote, would welcome working with partners to help the government in identifying and delivering such opportunities locally. Just consider adding 10 to 25,000 more homes to Basingstoke or Bramley or swallowing up Old Basing. Making it worse, any new towns are not included in our borough's allocation of new homes. It would add to the national housing numbers, not ours. How could our borough accommodate this massive increase in housing numbers? The traffic on our roads, the stress on our public services, on our already struggling rivers and green spaces. This would be a huge mistake. Please think again about supporting the removal of the urban uplift. This just makes it easier for developers to take greenfields on the edge of urban areas rather than tackling brownfield sites. Please put more emphasis on making developers more accountable. It is unrealistic to say that we can achieve sustainable development if we are allowed to progress our post-Regulation 18 draft plan. It would be marvellous if it was that simple. We all know developers take little notice of the local plan. Instead, they game the 5-year housing supply, building their favourite sites, whether in the plan or not, in phases of 100 to 300 homes where they don't have to provide community infrastructure and make the most money. So let's genuinely work together to oppose any proposals for new towns in our borough, to protect our green spaces and the integrity of our rural communities. Yes, we must build more social and affordable homes, but let's build mixed developments where our communities want and need them, in a sustainable way with the right infrastructure. Together, we can make this happen. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Isaac.
And Konecki, when they write, these changes would be nothing short of a disaster for our borough. A reasonable, rational government would not punish this borough, as it is evidently determined to do, with no willingness to talk meaningfully about transitional arrangements that would allow the current draft local plan to proceed, but allow for future changes. Communities like mine now face for years to come an infestation of speculative housing proposals on unallocated sites developers want to build on, rather than where determined locally and democratically by our residents and their elected representatives. But is this the real underlying motive of Mrs. Rayner? A free-for-all for developers with a stronger presumption in favour of development, resulting in more homes built more quickly. It is no coincidence that boroughs such as Basingstoke are being singled out compared to Labour's urban strongholds. While our housing numbers are to go up by 37%, Southampton's and Slough's will reduce by 12 and 6.4%. But urban areas have the infrastructure to best provide for more housing. Why did this administration in its NPPF consultation response think this shift away from the urban uplift was a good idea? Perhaps they should have asked the rest of us. Based on the most recent figures I can find, we have unimplemented planning permissions for over 7,000 homes in this borough. Yet there is nothing of substance from Angela Rayner in her NPPF proposals to encourage or force developers to build out rather than sit on sites. Instead, it is this borough as planning authority rather than deliverer of homes that is receiving even more of the stick. Given that we are being dictated to in this unfair and arbitrary way, does it occur to members of the administration that individually they may soon need to consider their futures in defence of our communities and their own long-held positions on how many more new homes this borough can realistically be expected to take, or are they going to fall into line with the government?
Councillor Konecki.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I'm grateful to you for rejigging the order of the agenda tonight so that I can respond to this motion. I'd like I'd like to thank the councillors for putting this motion forward, as it raises some interesting points and it also gives us an opportunity as an administration to reiterate our views on house building in the borough. Let me be absolutely clear once again about the administration's position on housing numbers. This administration strongly objects to the government's proposed increase in our housing target. We've already expressed our concern on this matter to the government, both directly via our response to the NPPF consultation and indirectly via our local MPs. We've come so far with our existing draft of our NPPF. We now want the opportunity to finish the job and make sure that our borough has a sustainable plan that puts power back into the hands of local people and protects us from speculative development. I'd hope that everybody in this chamber, regardless of where they sit, would support this position. Let me be absolutely clear once again about this administration's desire to increase our investment in infrastructure. This administration wants our borough to benefit from more schools, a new hospital, better public transport, clearer waterways, increased sewage capacity. Our infrastructure is barely coping with our current population. What's going to happen if we have to build 1,200 new houses every year for the next 15 years? We'll continue to lobby central government, Hampshire County Council and others to make sure we get the funding we need to implement the infrastructure upgrades. And again, I would hope that everybody in this chamber, regardless of where they're sitting, would agree with that position. And let me be clear once again about this administration's desire to listen to local residents and councillors. We undertook a 6-week public consultation on the draft local plan earlier on this year and received around 7,000 responses in total. When the new NPPF is finalised, we'll update our local plan accordingly and we'll consult with local residents and councillors once again. And again, I would hope that everybody in this chamber, regardless of where they're sat this evening, would support that position. And finally, let me clarify this administration's position on new towns, because we've heard a lot about that in this evening and in the press. We've read claims and we've heard this evening that we want to build 10,000 home new towns in our borough. That's simply not true. We don't want to build any 10,000 home new towns in our borough. We made that very clear at a recent committee meeting, and I'm very happy to repeat that again this evening on the record. What we said in our consultation response is something very different. If the government's proposals for the NPPF stay unchanged and we're obliged to deliver thousands of extra new homes in our borough, then we may have to involve that solution may have to involve suitably located developments along the lines of Manydown, which is in our current plan and already has outline planning consent. And I hope that everybody in this chamber, regardless of where they're sitting, could at least understand the logic behind that position and the need to keep our options open at this stage. So where does that leave us? Well, we've already undertaken many of the actions that the motion has asked us to do, and we've agreed to undertake some of the others. And we also share a number of concerns that have been expressed by the motion's authors. And yet, I can't support this motion as it currently stands. Unfortunately, the motion mixes some sensible suggestions with unnecessary political posturing, despite what the authors have said this evening. We've made our position on new towns very clear, including at a recent committee meeting, and yet, for some reason, the authors continue to misrepresent our views. The authors choose to complain about a consultation response to the government, despite the fact that they were given an advance copy of our response and were encouraged to submit their own responses as they wished. And they also said that we should express our concerns to government about the housing targets. And that's exactly what we did in that contested consultation response. So why are we being asked to say the same thing again? And why are we being criticised for saying what they actually want us to say? So I'll continue to fight for this borough. I'll continue to fight for the opportunity to finish our draft local plan with its lower housing numbers and its tough environmental and livability standards. I don't believe that this motion helps us to achieve that objective, so I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Please bear in mind the time because I've got too many speakers. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion is really disappointing. We're talking about one of the most important subjects for our residents, and it honestly is all a game and a political stunt to the Conservatives. Their social media pours out some really disgusting and vile personal attacks, and I wonder why people have turned away from them. Really, I really do wonder why they've turned away from them. They preach revisionism, trying to rewrite history, pumping out some quite interesting alternative facts. It was their cabinet in charge for 17 years in this council, with 14 years of a Tory government on top. Now let's be clear. Councillor Andrew Finney, Tory council leader, was chair of the South East Diamonds for Growth Board. He was one of its biggest advocates. And in his 2009 presentation, he actively promotes the Diamonds for Growth. Basingstoke was designated a Diamond for Growth in 2008 under his Tory leadership. His 2009 council plan says, your council plays a leading role in the South East Diamonds project, identifying Basingstoke as one of the key drivers in the South East economy as a designated growth point. The Conservatives cannot wash away the facts of history. The truth is, they all signed us up to the Diamonds for Growth agenda in 2008. It was on their watch. Councillor Clive Sanders took over as the Tory council leader from Councillor Finney, and in his Horizon 2050 vision document for our borough, he promotes the possibility of new towns and villages. The motion isn't simply untruthful, it's also downright hypocritical. I have here the Conservatives' vision for the south of Basingstoke. In 2021, the Conservatives produced a development plus master plan where they proposed thousands of houses, the hospital and warehouses right on top of Oakley and North Waltham. They called it Vision for the Land North of the M3 at Junction 7. It was a document adopted by that administration as their blueprint for that area. Now that was at the same time as the Conservative leadership said publicly that the planning system needed to undergo reform because there were too many barriers to housing growth. And that over the previous 3 years, Basingstoke and Deane delivered at least 1,200 homes a year. Quote, something the administration was very proud of. In the last 6 years of the Conservative administration, we saw 6,600 houses built in Basingstoke. That's 1,500 more than the target the council was set by their own government. It took them nearly a decade to do the last local plan. They had 17 years running the council. What Basingstoke has faced was all on their watch. And let's be really clear, we inherited Popham Airfield as a shortlisted site in their version of the local plan. They'd already identified it for 3,000 homes in a new settlement. We're focused on the job of getting a local plan done, of having an adopted plan that can actually protect our communities and also deliver what they need. Not only had we developed a local plan that was widely consulted on earlier this year, but we'd found solutions that reduced the housing number to 700 homes a year for the first 5 years of the new plan period, followed by another review as the legislation dictates. We're considering the outcomes of the consultation, and we were intending to propose to remove Popham in the next iteration of that plan. We want to proceed with the plan that we have been developing in good faith, the plan that would see thousands of affordable homes built with a focus on socially rented homes. It would bring in a really strong set of policies that would challenge developers. It's a plan that the consultation shows has the support of communities across Basingstoke and Deane. It was a plan that would attract inward investment to build our economy and grow sensibly into the future. We need solutions for the nearly 5,000 people on our housing register. We need solutions for our villages that have been prey to speculative development over the years of chaos the Tories created as they fought many down tooth and nail. Make no mistake, our villages who know who left them to suffer from recent years of speculative development. We need solutions that deliver infrastructure. We need solutions that protect our rivers from the tons of sewage being dumped on them on the Tory government's watch. We say it is better to have a plan that works, controls development, than play games. The people of our borough want better than this motion.
Councillor West.
Hey, feels a lot more comfortable to not be agreeing with the Tories again. Sorry about that little blip a moment ago. It's all done now. It's much safer territory. I mean, this is not surprising from my point of view as a young person who's been born in this borough, raised in this borough, and has seen the Tories lack ambition in this area time and time again. To see this motion brought here is not a surprise to any of us. This motion reflects a refusal to engage with the real challenges being faced by people, specifically a lot of the people in the urban areas of our borough. And as a group, obviously, we were able to talk on that with a bit more authority than the Tories because we represent far more of the people living in those urban areas in this borough. And I think what's important for you to understand and to know is that lots of working families like mine and people in constituents in my ward are currently not able to get on the housing ladder, not able to get rented accommodation, not able to get social rent accommodation. There is a huge housing crisis that we're facing, and to lack ambition in this area is just a mistake for this council. We've got an opportunity now where we've got a government with a clear vision about how to fix that issue. If we don't engage at this moment, if we don't say, how do we start that conversation rather than immediately rejecting it the moment it comes to fruition, we miss out on this infrastructure that I'm really glad to hear the administration talking about, really glad that they're keen to engage on those issues with the government and get to a place where that infrastructure that we desperately need and have needed for a long time, it finally comes along. But I don't think we ever get that conversation without saying to the government, look, let's meet you halfway. I don't think we'll ever get to a place where we can just reject targets and then also ask for money. Those things aren't going to happen. We need to get to a place where we're having the conversation on both sides, and to reject it outright just makes no sense, so I will not be supporting this motion.
Maiden speech, that's very good. Now, Councillor Philimo to talk.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I promise I'll be apolitical next year, but I'm not going to be apolitical tonight. It's total hypocrisy what we're hearing from this lot over it. You cannot believe it. You cannot believe it. We've got people telling us about speculative development. What's happening about speculative development? Tell the people of Bramley, Sherfield, and all those areas about speculative development, because you didn't build many down. You didn't build many down. You didn't have a 5-year land supply. Total hypocrisy. Councillor Vaux goes on about social housing. You built 14 in your last year in administration.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whilst I don't disagree with the underlying concern that housing development must meet the needs of local residents and come with the necessary infrastructure, this motion is slightly misleading and fails to acknowledge some key facts. First of all, I think we all recognise that development must be sustainable, and local people have a right and rightly demand that any new homes are supported by schools, healthcare, transport links and other vital services. And I also agree that any large-scale developments, including the concept of new towns, should not proceed without careful consideration of the impact on their local communities. However, as many people have said already this evening, this motion conveniently ignores the fact that the Conservatives who held administration in Basingstoke for 17 years and the former Conservative government for 14 years consistently failed to ensure that the right infrastructure was delivered alongside the new housing. For 17 years, we saw development springing up without corresponding investment in roads, public transport or local services, leaving many areas struggling to cope with increased population and traffic. In fact, we're probably in this situation today, or one of the reasons, is because the Conservatives on that side opposed the development in Manydown, a significant project that would have addressed some of the housing issues, whilst also addressing the necessary infrastructure that would have been built in tandem. And this led to our borough having a lack of a 5-year land supply. And so it's their opposition to Manydown that has led to a lot of the speculative development across the borough, with developers taking advantage of the borough's inability to plan accordingly. Now, many councillors across the chamber, I'm not just going to finger point here, because I have listened to the debate during the local plan discussions, talk about or oppose sites being put forward as part of their local plan. However, there is never any alternative solution put forward by them. To me, that is NIMBYism at its best. So the claim that we must stand up against imposed targets and speculative development rings hollow, given the past record of the party opposite. Secondly, whilst the motion attacks the current government for housing targets, let's not forget that the Conservative Party have, as I said, had been in government for 14 years. They had ample opportunity to ensure the national planning policy framework and ensure that to change it, and to ensure that housing targets were more flexible and responsive to local conditions. Yet they did nothing. Instead, they allowed targets to remain high, failed to provide local councils with the tools to ensure that new developments came with the infrastructure residents need. If anyone is responsible for the situation that we find ourselves in, it is the party that have been in power for that long. And let's look at the facts. Basingstoke does have a growing population and we do need new homes. We have a housing register with nearly 5,000 people on, all waiting for housing. Now, I agree that these homes must be built where these houses where they are needed, at a pace that doesn't overwhelm our infrastructure and in consultation with local people. But what we need is a balanced approach, one that delivers new housing while safeguarding our environment and ensuring that every new development comes with the necessary roads, schools and healthcare services. Whilst trying not to give the administration a big head, they have tried to address the situation, which your group failed to do. They have submitted a response to the MPPF consultation to highlight the infrastructure and environmental concerns for our borough. This is exactly the kind of responsible leadership we need, not the short-sighted approach that the failed Basingstoke Conservatives did under their administration. And let's not forget that during your 17 years of control, you also failed to address issues such as affordable housing and sustainability in any meaningful way. We're still playing catch-up in terms of a lack of infrastructure, not because of targets imposed by a Labour government, because of years of under-delivery by Conservative administrations and governments. But let's be clear, I believe this administration has acted swiftly and in line with its mandate to protect the interests of Basingstoke residents. And in conclusion, whilst I agree that we must fight for housing targets that reflect the needs of our borough and ensure that development is done sustainably, this motion is little more than an attempt to shift blame away from years of Conservative failure. And the solution lies in building the right homes in the right places with the right infrastructure. Again, something the Conservatives failed to do in their 17 years in power, and therefore I cannot support this motion. Thank you. Dry mouth.
Councillor McIntyre, you have 5 minutes to sum up.
Just need to explain.
And before I let you speak, the 20 minutes have gone for the debate, so other speakers have to really speak for other time. So, Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate everyone's input on this. Obviously, development in the borough is a sensitive question, sensitive topic. I told the leader at the EIS committee that I'm willing to work collaboratively with them. Collaboration is a two-way street, though. Whilst we on this side of the chamber do support some of this administration's response to the MPPF, we cannot support them in championing new towns in our borough. To respond to Councillor Conchetsko, this is what this administration... This is what this administration actually said in public. This government's New Towns programme will include large... Oh, sorry, I'll go back. So, what the actual...
James, would you stop speaking when somebody else is speaking, please?
I didn't realise I was speaking. I was farting out of his mouth.
Oh, this is not right. Come on, Councillor James. You should know better.
I apologise to the rest of the chamber. I apologise to Councillor McIntyre. We should just stick to the truth, though.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hopefully that hasn't taken up any of my time dealing with childish antics on the other side of the thing. So what the government actually said, so this is government policies on their website. I suggest that the Deputy Leader has a look and he can see what the facts actually say. This government's New Towns programme will include large-scale new communities built on greenfield land and separated from other nearby settlements, but also a larger number of urban extensions and urban regeneration schemes that will work with the grain of development in any given area. The underlying principle will be that each of the new settlements will contain at least 10,000 homes, although we expect a number to be far larger in size. They've talked about 25,000 homes in some of these areas. Government policy on new homes, July 2024 it was published. This is what this administration said in their response. And this wasn't an officer response. I spoke to the officers. The officers didn't provide this information. There was only 2 signatures on that letter, which was Councillor Harvey and Councillor Kay. It's one of them that said this. The Council supports the emphasis on suitably located new towns to deliver the levels of growth required and would welcome working with partners to help the Government in identifying and delivering such opportunities locally. 10,000 homes up to 25,000 homes, that's one of their 2 responses. Hypocrisy, hypocrisy, the Deputy Mayor accused us of being hypocritical. However, it's about looking forward. This isn't hypocrisy. All I've heard from the Independents, Lib Dem and Labour is what the Conservatives hadn't done. You may be surprised, but we're not in administration or government. Do you know what I mean? This is you. This is about what you're doing. And again, you're making a joke out of it. You voted against housing numbers when it was a Conservative government. So it'll be interesting to see how you vote this time, because we're asking you to work together with us. This is about looking forward. This is the proposed changes to the NPPF. This isn't about looking what the Conservative NPPF changes were. That's history. This is about the future of our borough. So Councillor West said it was typical of Conservatives, etc. I don't think it's ambitious to champion New Bramley or Overchurch. Maybe they would call it Witton, perhaps, when they put 25,000 houses there, because where are they going to put these new towns when we're looking at areas that have the road and rail infrastructure? This is what you're voting for if you support it, this motion. And I think really the last point then, responding to the Deputy Mayor, because all I keep hearing is this issue about lack of housing that's been delivered at social rent. Let me repeat what we were told by our 2 largest housing providers. They cap affordable rent at social rent levels when you have the universal credit housing uplift. We were told that by them. It's a misnomer that you're using for this, okay? It is social rent on another name, and it's done within this borough. And we support it. It's good to deliver that. Okay, so let's just focus on that point. I'm going to ask for a recorded vote, Mr. Mayor, because I think I do. I can get a sense of how this is going to go, you know, and unfortunately, they have brought politics into it.
Thank you.
What I will be telling you is we will be comparing how you voted previously. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will now take a vote, and it will be electronic voting. Is lost. So we have got question from members. Yeah. Now we have got question from members of the council on notice. Members, we have a lot of questions tonight, and have an allotted time of 40 minutes. Please, could I ask that you keep your questions and responses concise and within the time limit. All right, the first one is Councillor Basham to the Leader of the Council, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the interests of speed and the number of questions on the papers tonight, the question is as per the order paper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Basham. Thank you, Paul. We know that members across this chamber feel very strongly about management companies and their practices, their exorbitant fees, and the lack of responsiveness to residents. In this particular example, the introduction of a post which could be considered to frustrate councillors undertaking their democratic representative role has been a serious concern. We have a responsibility to support our residents where they seek our help. Management companies should not make that process of representing residents difficult. They should work with us to resolve the concerns of residents and not put barriers in that way. I will raise the issue that you have raised here and request that the CEO of First Port and the CX of Vivid address this issue. I'll write to government to highlight this issue and work with our MP to ensure that we coordinate the representation of residents. Yes, you're right to raise the issue because we need to be absolutely clear that councillors have a right and duty to represent residents. And if colleagues have other examples of management companies doing this in our borough or concerns about management companies, I would encourage you please to share this.
Councillor Basham, do you have supplement? 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just say to members, getting a question on the paper is quite powerful. Today, I've had an update from both Vivid and from First Port, and they are, on the face of it, positive updates. Don't underestimate what asking a question here can do. I appreciate many of you are more experienced than me. I've been quite taken aback. But we do have some real problems with First Port locally. And I guess my question is, if any of you are having problems with management companies, I'm becoming quite experienced in this, so please do reach out.
Councillor Harvey, 1 minute.
Thank you, Paul, and I agree.
I have Councillor Dillo to Councillor Laura James.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to express serious concerns regarding the current condition of the green space and pond located in School Close in Buckskin, in my ward of Kempshott and Buckskin. This area, nestled within a residential community, has the potential to serve as both a recreational space for local families and children and a vital habitat for wildlife, particularly given the thriving blackberry bushes and other natural features that could benefit local ecosystems. However, the space has been neglected, with the pond and surrounding vegetation becoming heavily overgrown. The pond itself is almost entirely covered with plants and brambles obscuring it from view, and the broken fencing around it poses a significant safety risk, offering no protection to prevent children from falling in. Additionally, the pond requires clearing and repair to restore it to a condition that supports both local wildlife and safe community use. I therefore ask, will the Council take the following urgent actions? Clear the overgrown vegetation from the green space to make it usable area for families and a healthier habitat for wildlife. Repair or replace the broken fencing around the pond to ensure the safety for children and pets. And clear and repair the pond itself to restore its ecological and community value. Thank you.
Councillor James, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. The open space at School Close, which includes a wooden fenced area around a former pond, received substantial pruning and clearing in September 2023 by the grounds maintenance team and is due to another visit in November this year. The grass on the site is mown regularly throughout the year in line with the standard maintenance of the area. The site is also litter picked once a week by our street cleansing team. Officers from the Ranger and Biodiversity teams had surveyed this area of open space. The grounds maintenance team are exploring options for the site. We'll be contacting you and fellow councillors to discuss proposals for the future of the space. This is all as part of the extensive work to improve our environment in Buckskin. Can I thank the officers and the Street Care MAD team for what they have done already in Buckskin, in Lowlands Road, Dalwood Road, Malvern, Blackdown Close, Sperring Close, Recklin, Wrekin, Berwyn, Sidlaw, Orkle, Bodmin, Exmoor, Priscilly, Quantock, Charnwood, Campsie, Grampian and Buckskin Lane. They have undertaken huge amount of work as a direct result of our investment in frontline services.
Councillor Dilo, you have 1 minute for supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the urgency is the repair of the fencing around the pond to ensure that it is safe. But this issue raises the question whether there are any other areas in our green space and in our borough that have been neglected and therefore could be a safety risk. And will the portfolio holder confirm that maybe a review of green spaces and ponds across the borough will be carried out to ensure areas that we are responsible for are safe for residents to use? Thank you.
Councillor Laura James, 1 minute to respond.
Thank you. We take seriously the issue of risk, and like I say, this is a former pond, and I visited the site, and there is no water in the site, but it does need to be addressed, the area, and the fence needs to be addressed. And what we're going to do, as I said, is there's a big piece of work been going on, and we're calling councillors in to look at what our proposals are, and we would seek your support for those, and please work with us on that area. I think you'll be very happy with what we're proposing.
Councillor McCormick to Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a very brief question. How many enforcement cases have been logged and fixed penalty notices issued for stationary engine idling?
Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I thank Councillor McCormick for your question. In January 2019, as part of the Council's Climate and Ecological Emergency Commitment, we launched the Clean Air Basingstoke initiative to encourage people to walk, cycle more rather than drive, and turn off their vehicles when they are parked instead of letting them idle. I still carry the sticker in my car rear window. At that time, the Hampshire County Council allowed us to manage on-street parking enforcement on its behalf. We were able to adopt powers to enforce against idling vehicles under the Road Traffic Vehicle Emissions Fixed Penalty England Regulations 2002. Our officers could ask drivers who left their engines running to switch them off, and if they did not do so, issue them with a fixed penalty notice of £20. No fines were issued under these powers, as drivers all switched their engines off when asked. The Council does not hold a record of how many drivers were spoken to, however, under these powers. In April 2022, the County Council terminated our enforcement arrangement. While this means our officers can no longer issue fixed penalty notices for idling, this was only one way in which we were able to maintain and improve upon the relatively good quality of the air in our borough, which currently meets all national air quality standards. Our enforcement officers continue to respond to reports about idling vehicles in car parks, including asking people to turn off their engines. Signs have also been put up to discourage idling at Down Grange, Basingstoke train station and in other areas throughout the borough. Alongside this, we also continue to promote anti-idling messages and encourage positive behavioural changes, such as walking and cycling more and car sharing through our Clean Air Basingstoke campaign and our Sustainable Basingstoke initiative, and of course via the Council's communications, including social media and the annual residents' newspaper. Thank you.
Councillor McCormick, do you have a supplementary question? 1 minute.
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. Given the fact that Hampshire County Council have now taken AC powers back, what is the portfolio holder now going to do about it? Thank you.
Councillor Tomlin, 1 minute to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, in answer to that, I think I covered that we are going to currently carry on with this as something we want people to change their behaviour. It seems that people have changed their behaviour because we didn't actually catch anybody doing it. We can't actually enforce the fines, as I explained, so we will just maintain this as part of our education programme in communications as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, in the interests of brevity, the question is largely as per the order paper. I would just say this relates to the closure of cardiac rehabilitation classes for working age people at the town centre gym, a class which I attend or used to attend until they closed it. I think there's a failure happening with our integrated care board and our services in the borough. And will the leader commit to getting the parties together to urgently discuss steps to put cardiac rehabilitation back onto the timetable for working people in Basingstoke?
Harvey. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Paul, for your question. Thank you, Councillor Basham. I know this is something that really matters to you and many other residents. Yes, I will pick this up with colleagues, Councillor Morrow and Councillor Mackay, and we will see what we can do to help the situation. You rightly say that Basingstoke's NHS has led in the field of cardiac rehabilitation, and so we should embrace the benefit it offers, and so accessibility for working people should be better than currently on offer. We meet regularly with the ICB and the hospital, whose responsibility this is. We will raise it with them directly and we'll come back.
Councillor Basham, supplementary.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I'm aware that this council used to support what was then Basingstoke Sports Trust, I think, before it was taken over by GLL, with a small financial grant. I'm not going to ask you to offer or even look at extending any sort of grant to GLL, but what I would ask is that at the appropriate time, would you be prepared to consider something at the Aquadrome and or the Tadley Gym, which are sports centres that are under the council's control?
Councillor Harvey.
Can I defer to my colleague Councillor Morrow to reply to that?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to say, I've already asked the head of service. We were already looking at that option. She was quite positive. So.
Councillor Freeman to... Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Isaac to Councillor Gavin James.
Does Councillor James agree that this council should fund a further COLAF round of £1 million to help the least well-off residents of this borough, including pensioners affected by the loss of winter fuel payment?
Thank you for that question. I agree the withdrawal of the universal winter fuel allowance will push many pensioners into poverty. Just going to highlight a few issues with the suggestion. Firstly, the Chancellor has indicated there will be several cuts in the budget. It would be wrong to make a commitment to a specific group until we know the full scale of those cuts when they're announced. Secondly, one of the cuts that could be announced is to our own funding. And that's part of the reason why we have never committed to COLAF this earlier in the financial year. It's never been in a budget draft. It's always become along later once we've got outturns and once we've got that final funding settlement from the government. I do think, however, we do need to review how effective COLAF has been. It's now been running 3 years. That was never the plan. It's not had the resources or the setup. So we can do some work from that, and obviously, hopefully, we'll bring that to resources when the draft budget comes to you to have a look at. What I will say is this administration is committed to reducing poverty in the borough, and we are developing an anti-poverty strategy to achieve that. And obviously, part of that is looking at whether COLAF or other schemes might be better in the future.
Supplementary.
Yeah, just the point is that the existing COLAF scheme is shortly going to run out, but I think hearing what Councillor James says, I think that his heart's in the right place if it can be funded, and I hope that this council can continue to be generous to the least well off in the borough.
Councillor James.
We certainly want to support the less well-off in the borough, and that's a quick question to ask about how effective COLAF has been. We've got some early indication that most of the people who claimed it in year one have come back and claimed it in a subsequent year. So it's not dealing with poverty, it's offering short-term respite. Obviously, we're still collecting data on that, but if 50% of the people it isn't really helping because they're coming back, we may need to look at doing something differently. The example I always give is if you give a pensioner £100 to heat their home, they can keep it warm for a month. If you send the green team round to give them new insulation and put some draft exclusion in and teach them how to manage their heat, they may stay warm for a year. And that kind of thing solves the poverty better sometimes than just a short-term cash flow.
Councillor Freeman to Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As per the order paper.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you, Councillor Freeman. I just want to say from the start that I respect the representation that you're making on behalf of your residents in this question. This is complex and it involves a lot of moving parts, as any development does. It also involves legal agreements, pre-commencement planning conditions and programme decisions by Vivid to move the project forward. I understand that Vivid secured funding that was available under Homes England grants running into 2026. Now, at the moment, there is no funding for housing projects beyond that. So for them, it was a critical step in securing that funding. We are all waiting to see what the government will do on future funding for social housing in the coming months, perhaps through the upcoming budget. I hope it is announced in the upcoming budget and we have some certainty around the grants beyond 2026 that Homes England will be able to offer. What we do know is that construction costs and inflation have made development very difficult for our housing partners. But the hard yards following permission to get the Section 106 and the other legal sign-offs continue. This is the normal situation for any development programme. Now, only Vivid know absolutely about the day-to-day detail of their project. We've arranged for you to get monthly updates from them, and you will continue to get information from Vivid as they make progress on this, through meetings as well as those briefings. We also need to encourage effective communication with residents. What I do know is that Vivid have heard you very clearly.
Councillor Freeman, supplementary, 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So given the funding issues and the rising cost of building works, please can Winkelbury residents have some guarantee that vital community facilities like the proposed medical centre and the new preschool building will not be reduced in size or discarded altogether because they are no longer economically viable. We have a serious concern in our community that this regeneration, which has been less than ideal from the start, is just basically going to benefit nobody but Vivid commercially, and Winkelbury residents are being let down badly. I would like to explore further options and what we can do to make sure this is a lot better offering for our residents.
Councillor Harvey, 1 minute to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You will know, because we had the meeting that you attended where we sat around the table with Vivid and had that conversation where myself and the portfolio holder for major projects in regeneration were very forceful about the point, not only of the surgery being the 550 square metres, not the 225 square metres, also the community centre in terms of the hall and the aspects that were part of the application that was approved, also the social housing. And that's an important point because what the grant funding will enable, we hope, is that the grant funding would unlock the socially rented housing that we're looking for, particularly the family housing that we're looking for, and that has always been a key part of the increase in number, but also the 4 beds, the big family housing that we will get on the back of this. So I completely agree with you. We have to keep Vivid's feet to the fire on this, but what I do know is they are cooperating and they are seeking to work with us as partners should. We have to maintain that and keep that going. And as I say, we can have the conversation with them, but another piece of this puzzle is that residents can have the conversation with them too. We need that interaction.
McIntyre to Councillor Gavin James.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The current lease to Basingstoke Town Limited for the land at Southam is set at £65 per year until 2052. Considering this rate and the potential re-evaluation of the land, how does the council justify this arrangement? And is there an intention to renegotiate the lease to reflect current market values and ensure better use of public assets? Thank you.
Thank you. This is an historic arrangement made in May 1962, so I think I'm in the clear and possibly even Councillor Isaac's in the clear as well on this one. It was leased to the football club, as you say, for £65 per annum. It's got, for the next 30 years, it's on a fixed rent. It's a contractual obligation. And although the football club has relocated, the arrangement is on land, is still in force, and it can't be extinguished. legally we can't do anything with it.
McIntyre, supplement, 1 minute.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Previously, Councillor James, you've discussed reactive disposals where properties could be sold if the right opportunity arises without actually informing residents and councillors in advance. Is this what you're proposing for the land at the Camrose which the council owns? Are there plans for a reactive disposal of this land that the council has yet to disclose? Thank you.
I don't think this land falls under the property investment strategy, which is where we'd normally disclose it. It depends on evaluation, in which case it would go to I think if it's up to £250,000 or £350,000, it would come to the head of regeneration, director of regeneration. It would still be published as a decision notice. Because of the sensitivity around the site, we'd make sure that certainly the ward councillors are aware, and any other interest, and I know you've been very interested in following the football club, were aware. At this stage, we're not planning to dispose of it because, well, let's face it, we're not telling anyone anything. We'll see what happens. Sometimes in property, it's best to just say nothing.
Councillor West to Councillor Laura James.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As per the order paper.
Thank you, Councillor West, for the question. I'm really glad that you've asked this. We have a suite of housing update papers going to the committee in November for resident services. And one of the papers will set out the latest position on our work to bring forward new affordable housing and the quickest way the council can enable the delivery of social rented. And just to take the opportunity to actually make clarity, social rents in relation to local housing allowance is incorrect, the information that was given. They're much higher than a social rent, just to clarify. I want to thank the office for all the work that they're doing on this agenda. I'm pleased to say that this year we will see the delivery of 494 new affordable homes with a significant increase in the number of socially rented homes. It is vital that we ensure that any new affordable housings delivered must indeed be affordable, whether through low-cost home ownership models or ensuring new rented accommodation is set at social rents. We are lucky to have Homes England strategic partnerships already operating in the borough, ready to stream the government's grant funding available and bring forward new homes we need. For the next year, we will be bringing forward exciting proposals to directly acquire and ensure better supported homes for the most vulnerable homeless residents.
Supplementary, Councillor West.
Thank you for that. And yeah, nothing more at the time other than I continue to support and scrutinise the administration on delivery of this. I think we both share that ambition for getting this delivered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor West, and I really look forward to working with you, and I'm happy to meet with you to discuss the work that we're doing if you would like a briefing.
Councillor Moma Laneni to Councillor Laura James.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you please provide an update on the current status of Sovereign's proposal for 180 Culver Road in my ward? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. As you're a county councillor and this is county land, I do hope that you will lobby your own Conservative county administration to ensure that this site does come forward for affordable housing. The Culver Road site has been particularly challenging to bring forward for redevelopment due to the drainage constraints and significant viability challenges. The council and its partners, Hampshire County Council, who own the site, and SNG Housing Association, have been committed to pursuing the project and invested significant time and resources trying to bring an affordable housing scheme forward. SNG are undertaking further analysis and testing to explore every option available. We will, of course, inform all ward members as soon as there is anything further to report. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Mr. Mayor. Yes, does it mean that SNG is now reconsidering that they don't want to develop?
I don't think you heard what I said, if I just report. SNG are undertaking further analysis and testing to explore every option available. And as I said, you are a county councillor and this is county council owned land. I suggest you actually talk to the county and help us to drive forward this development.
Councillor McIntyre to Councillor Morrow.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Given that other councils have managed to protect and invest in their sporting assets for the benefit of the community, is the council willing to review and reassess the current situation at the Camrose ground, given the scrapping of the link road and the need to develop suitable sporting facilities for Basingstoke's growing population? Thank you.
Councillor Morrow.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's safe to say we will always have an eye on what is happening at the Camrose site, but most of the facts remain the same. Basron Development Limited owns the majority of the land and has, on appeal, won 2 planning applications to redevelop the Camrose site. The council's land is not included in these planning applications. The council-owned land is a small strip, 1.92 acres in size, and has little influence over what the owner of the site can or cannot do with their land. As for the council protecting and investing in their sporting assets, we most certainly do. I'm happy to report that work to enhance the facilities at Winkleby Football Complex are now complete, allowing Basingstoke Town Community Football Club to play at their current level. The club is also due to open its new clubhouse, which is massive for the social side of the football club, but also will be an important opportunity for the club to boost their revenue income and strengthen their business plan. Away from football, we are replacing our much-loved aquadrome with a new leisure and water offering. This significant investment is attracting further investment into the leisure park. Getting many down over the line will also open up exciting opportunities where development will deliver investment in sport.
Councillor McIntyre, supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My understanding of the lease is that if the club should cease to exist, or if the land which is immediately to the south of the demised property or part thereof shall cease to be used by the club, the landlords may re-enter on the demised property. Now, I believe the club, Basingstoke Town Football Club, no longer uses the land. Why has the council allowed the continuation of this lease despite apparent breaches of the lease that restricts the use of the land to that of a football ground? Thank you.
Councillor Morrow.
Sorry, I need to leave the room. I caught the end of that. There's a 30-year lease in place. We've got no contractual control of the piece of land.
Sorry?
I was answering that supplementary question.
Oh, you were answering to the supplementary. Okay.
Yes, well, I've given you supplementary, was it?
Yes.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Now, Councillor
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when can we expect an implementation of a CRM portal which gives a provision for the councillors to monitor residents' reported issues and their resolutions, a feature that was already promised previously, and the similar system exists in several places, including the Hampshire County Council? Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, for the question. Now, while historically there have been discussions about portals, one more for customers to use, which would also be used by councillors. There was actually a decision made by your own previous administration about 3 years ago now not to provide a portal for customers, as this can be an extra barrier to accessing services online. Now, as a council, we've got absolutely no recollection of HCC being referred to as a model that we could or should use. It's the first time it's been raised by you. So I'm not sure really where the question's coming from, but if you want to talk to me about it, Aaron, I'm happy to pick this up with you. You've actually said 3 letters in your question, which is more in verbal than you had in writing, which was CRM. You talked about portals in your question. You spoke about CRM in your verbal question to me. If we want to have a conversation about the CRM, I know officers are progressing that piece of work. That's different to the portal, I think, that you were talking about. So with respect, your question has confused us, trying to understand exactly what you meant. Talk to us, have a conversation about what you want to raise, and let's get to the bottom of giving you a proper answer. Very happy to.
Supplementary.
Yes. This portal and CRM are one and same, which was promised when the officers briefed us when you were in administration. And this is promised, and this is what exactly we are asking for. And now it is diverting the case to saying that where it's existing. I can't understand it here, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Harvey.
Aaron, you've been clear in what you've said this evening, and I'm happy to come back with a proper written response to you. Thank you for clarifying.
Now we come to whether, are there any questions? Yeah.
Sorry, it's me. That's me.
Oh, just a minute.
That's my fault.
All right, Councillor McIntyre to Councillor Morrow.
I can hear the council sighing with a breath of release that I managed to get my last question in, didn't they? Can the portfolio holder update us on what plans the council has to work with Basingstoke Town Community Football Club to ensure it has a sustainable and long-term home, given the limitations at Winklebury and the financial constraints imposed by the Hampshire FA? Thank you.
Mr Mayor, our plan as a council is to empower Basingstoke Town Community Football Club to grow sustainably both on and off the field and support them where it is reasonable to do so. I believe the relationship with the club is good and that the club is currently thriving at Winklebury. The club are doing a wonderful job. They are unbeaten this season and are putting an incredible amount of effort in both on and off the pitch. The supporters and volunteers deserve massive praise. After support from the council, the Football Foundation, Hants FA, the club's new clubhouse will give the club a significant income stream and enhance the match day experience for all players and supporters, but most importantly, make the club more sustainable. As a council, we are supporting the club's relationship with Hampshire FA, and any financial arrangements between the two parties are agreed upon in their management agreement. Winklebury has passed the ground grading requirements for Tier 3 football, and going forward we will continue to work with the club and Hampshire FA to find a suitable long-term solution for the football club. We are all aware that the club's aspiration for a new facility. The council is willing to work with the club on this, but as pointing out, this would require significant outside investment. Our focus is to continue to support the club going forward in a sustainable way, and with open lines of communication with Basingstoke Town Community Football Club and Hampshire FA, we will continue to work together to achieve our shared goals. Thanks.
Councillor McIntyre, supplement.
Yeah, I have a supplementary. Councillor James, open your ears just in case he does pass it across, just so you get the full question this time instead of just the last bit. If the council's plan is to continue upgrading Winklebury for Basingstoke Town Football Club, how will the loss of the grass pitch and general football facilities at Winklebury be addressed? These facilities are vital for grassroots football, including children's teams, women's teams, walking football and other community groups who must not be overlooked in the process. Thank you.
So, assume you mean a artificial pitch, not grass pitch. I've gone through all the ground grading book from the FA. What we will do is we'll continue working with the football club and Hampshire FA to come up with that solution together. It's not for the council to dictate what we're going to do. We'll continue working together to come up with that solution.
Thank you. Now, are there any questions to the Chair of Cabinet or committees relating to the minutes listed below? Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not sure if one of the Winklebury councillors had the same question that I had, but on the Cabinet meeting 16th July, minute 624, capital outturn, can we have a progress report on a many down land drawdown and transfer?
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I actually have the great pleasure of saying to the Chamber that the actual deal for Many Down, the process of Many Down, has finally been signed. And the process will lead now to the full and total completion, as you do with a house. What it means is it has secured 3,500 houses on North Manydown, 1,400 of which will be affordable homes. So yes, Councillor James is absolutely right. We've delivered 494 as the number in this year's delivery of affordable homes. In future, we will have 1,400 more to add to that via the delivery of Manydown North. So can I thank the officers, if you'll give me a little bit of discretion, Mr. Mayor, can I thank the officers who have put so much time and effort into this, not least the process of signing and sealing, which took God knows how long with the documentation required. And thank you, Fiona, that your arm didn't drop off, to say the least. But just the amount of sheer hard work that has gone into this to get this far, it really does show what we've managed to achieve in 15 months, picking up from where it had previously been left off by the administration to get it as far as they did. Manydown will be delivered.
Councillor Lee. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I start, congratulations, although slightly disappointed that as a ward councillor we didn't find out that information beforehand.
Forgive me, Alex, I've been put on the spot this evening. I do apologise for that.
I'll let you off, Paul, as long as you answer this question correctly.
I'll try.
So, this, Mr. Mayor, this is on the Cabinet meeting dated 10th of September 2024, and the minute number is 2324, the Winkelbury regeneration. Apologies, I couldn't make the meeting at the night due to work commitments. During the discussion on this item, however, the Cabinet member for Resident Services stated that the loss of public open space at Carisbrooke Close would be replaced by a larger open space and play area at the former Fort Hill School. Now, as the leader played a considerable role alongside Labour councillors in opposing the closure of the school, at the time by the Conservatives, he would have been well aware that this land at Fort Hill was already in use by the community when the school was closed. When the school was open, and was lost when the Tories closed it. Does he therefore agree with me and my fellow ward councillors that the disposal of the land at Carisbrooke Close therefore actually represents a loss of much well-loved open space for the community of Winkelbury and Manydown?
Thank you, Alex. I'm going to tread with care here because I am not a planning expert, and that deserves a proper full planning response because it's probably an LPA interpretation and view of it beyond officers supporting as well to give the correct answer to your question. So I'm not going to leap up now and give you an answer and get it wrong. I think you deserve the right answer. I appreciate you weren't at the last meeting, and we'll keep this conversation going about these particularly important matters for you, Councillor West and Councillor Freeman. So it isn't just a matter of asking it this evening. Let's have the conversation and get a proper answer, if that's okay.
Have you got supplement?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, obviously I would welcome a response to the question. That's okay, not to worry, Mr. Mayor. Yeah. I appreciate the response.
So carry on, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I appreciate the response and would welcome a written response on that. I've lost my train of thought now. In our ward, we do suffer from a considerable lack of public open space. We've lost Harlech Close, the land at Harlech Hall. Obviously, we've lost the play council site as well with this. If this does constitute a loss, can I ask that he and the officers work with ways to identify other sites within the local area that may not be currently public land to be brought into public land?
Thanks, Alex. I'm very conscious that you're not the only ward that suffers from that issue. It would be wrong, I think, to make a promise to a particular community beyond all other communities as well that suffer from the same issue. And it is actually an issue of the way the estates are designed, the way they were sold, the way the land has been split up into various parcels over the years. It's a much bigger issue than just Winkleberry, to be fair. I think it's probably worth that we think about this very carefully. But one thing I would just say in terms of linking the two questions together, is that Many Down North will provide a huge country park as part of it on Winkleberry's doorsteps. It's not the same as delivering it within the community, it is, but it's part of a wider solution. However, taking the point away, let us think seriously about what you're saying and understand it. There is only so much that this authority can do beyond the land that we own, and others have obviously own privately or own in public interest, such as hospitals and schools and so on. Let's be very careful with this.
Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Reference Cabinet 30th July, minute 1524 Waste Service Review. In view of the report featured on BBC News on Tuesday, 15th October, that burning rubbish is now the UK's dirtiest form of power, producing almost as much carbon as coal, and also in view of the increasing incidence of plastic, including refuse bags themselves, in our non-recyclable waste, and finally in view of the Cabinet portfolio holder's previous campaigning history on Chinham Incinerator, would the leader give us his view on the continued use of Chinham Incinerator to dispose of our non-recyclable waste?
Andy, thank you, Councillor McCormick. In standing up and answering on behalf of the borough, I would ask you to direct your question to the County Council as the disposal authority. That's where the question should truly rest, with all due respect.
Right, no more questions. So that concludes the business for this evening, and I declare the council meeting over. Good night.